lost our daughter in April of 2016. There was no wake or burial. To be honest, I didn't even allow myself to grieve her loss until recently. She comes to me in my dreams sometimes to remind me of how much pain she was in. I need to be reminded of all of her pain in order to really let her go. There's no grave site to visit and mourn her loss because my child is still very much alive. I'm the mother of a transgender child who now goes by the name Austin. When I became pregnant for the first time, I would argue that nobody wanted a little girl more than I did. So when my doctor said, "It's a girl," I instantly started crying, like ugly crying. I spent the next 5 months designing her nursery in the shades of ballet slipper pink and pecan brown. As I wrestled with choosing the perfect girl's name, her entire life flashed before my eyes. Frilly lace-covered dresses with matching bows, her first ballet class, mother-daughter mani-pedis, communion dress, her sweet 16 dress, and one day her wedding gown. Gianna was born in August of 2010. She was so inquisitive and beyond stubborn. She marveled over what I thought was the most insignificant things. This kid had a playroom filled with every girly toy you could imagine, but would rather take apart the remote control and put it back together over playing with any of the toys in her playroom. Always opting for her father's tape measure and walking around in his work boots over wearing any of the Disney princess costumes we had for her. There was also always an uneasiness about her. She didn't like to be snuggled or held for too long. She always squirmed away, insisting on doing everything herself. Everything was on her own terms and in her own time, almost as if she was preparing to defend what was hers with her very life. And soon enough, that's exactly what would happen. Her stubborn nature was so embarrassing at times, but it also amazed me. While I was a follower most of my life, she most certainly was not a follower. She was strong-willed and independent. I would joke and say she was going to be a defense attorney someday. This didn't stop me from pushing my own social agenda on her, though. She left the house every day with a perfect side ponytail, a ginormous bow to match, and dressed to the nines. I'm talking bows that were bigger than her head. I'll never forget Easter Day when she was 3 years old. I was once again fighting with her, trying to get her into this frilly cream-colored dress. She was screaming and crying and did not want to wear this dress for anything. I tried to distract her by putting on Beauty and the Beast, which she was obsessed with at the time. During the famous scene where Bella's dancing with Beast in her beautiful yellow ball gown, she innocently looked at me and said, "Mommy, can a girl marry another girl?" I said, "Of course, as long as they love one another, that's all that matters." But about 10 minutes later, she came back up to me and said, "Mommy, I don't want to be Belle. I want to wear a tuxedo and dance with Belle like the Beast." It was very soon after that that all of her imaginative play started to consist of her playing the male gender role. She was always the daddy, the husband, the prince, the bad guy, making up traditionally masculine names for herself, talking in a deep voice, introducing us to her pretend girlfriend. We would always play along, of course, but I remember worrying about what others would think or say if she did this outside the home. By the time she was 3.5 years old, she had literally set a stake in the ground and declared that she was a boy. She never said, "I feel like a boy." It was always, "Mom, I'm not a girl, I'm a boy." She never wanted to play with the other little girls from school, so play dates were horrendous. She was a nightmare because she didn't want to play like the other girls were playing. She would beg me to put my husband's cologne on so she could at least smell like a boy. I could go on for hours about the daily comments, questions, and most alarming, the absolute shame that came attached with being a girl. I would do my best to always answer with something like, "God made you perfectly just the way you are." Or the classic, "Girls can do anything that boys can do and even better." And then I try to change the subject. Inside, I was so confused as to why these things were constantly weighing on my barely 4-year-old's mind. So I did what we all do nowadays. I asked Google. I had started to type this question into Google a couple times before, but could never get myself to click search. Finally, I did it. What does it mean if my daughter thinks she's a boy? Instantly, bam, a million things popped up. First being the words gender dysphoria in children. Next link, suicide risk for transgender youth. I closed out the page and just cried. I couldn't read anymore in that moment. I was petrified and completely lost. Through divine intervention, my brother-in-law was close with a director from the LGBT network, and I had confided in him about some of the concerning things that she was asking me about and doing around this time. He gently asked me if I wanted him to make a call to her. I was apprehensive, but I accepted his offer. She connected me with parents of trans kids in the area. She also set us up with a therapist at the network who works with transgender youth and their families, which led me to meeting with a gender specialist in New York City. We also started attending parent support group meetings. We came to learn that gender is drastically different than anatomy. Anatomy is just body parts. Gender is an internal sense of self hardwired in the brain. Gender has all to do with who you feel yourself to be, what you relate to, and then how you present that outward expression of gender to the world around you. I would lay awake at night thinking about my own gender identity. Identifying as a female was never something I needed to be told how to do. I liked certain things and I was drawn to a certain way. I wanted to express that to the world. There were so many other things about myself that mattered more than my gender identity and what body parts I had. I mean, I rarely meet a new person and start the conversation off by saying, "Hi, I'm Nicole. I have a vagina, and I'm interested in men." But there was still a part of me that was praying that this was just a phase for her and that it would eventually pass. I guess I couldn't face the thought of my child having such a tough life. I mean, what parent would want to send their child out into the world with a target on their back? I was frozen in fear. We decided just to keep things fluid at home and to not jump to any conclusions and just focus on making sure that she knew that as long as she wasn't hurting herself or anyone else, we would always love her unconditionally. Eventually, she started telling us that when she grew up, she was going to run away and cut her hair so she could be a boy. She told her pre-K teacher that she wanted to shave her head, that she was going to be a soldier, and that she wanted to marry her. That was an interesting conversation. By the time pre-K ended, she was begging us on the daily to cut her hair like a boy. So we tricked her into getting this really cute pixie haircut, hoping to pacify this nonstop obsession and arguing between us and our 4-year-old. We also toned down the wardrobe a bit. We tried to deceive her by buying the girl superhero line that Target came out with that year. She wasn't having it. Soon after that, she developed an aversion to her birth name. If she wrote it, she would cross it out as soon as she wrote it. Eventually, she started referring to herself as Austin. Our therapist told us that there were very pivotal milestones in a trans person's life, 2 of which are the name change and the haircut. She hated the pixie haircut from the second we tried to fool her with it. I'll never forget the day that everything became as clear as day for me. I was at a 5th birthday party that Gianna was invited to. There was a mother there who I didn't know personally, but I was told by another parent at the party all that she was going through. She had a 5-year-old son at the party, but she also had a 2-year-old daughter who was coming home on hospice the next day because she was dying of brain cancer. I witnessed what unbearable looked like that day. I saw what I consider to be the most devastating thing I could ever possibly imagine standing right in front of me. And all I could think was that if this mother knew what I was internally agonizing over, she'd probably want to grab me by my throat, tell me to get on my knees and thank God that I had my baby, that my baby was here with me. She was going to lose her baby. Part of me believes that I was meant to be in this room with this mother on this day to witness her pain and send me the silent but deafening message that I should practice some damn gratitude. I wasn't losing my baby. I was just getting to know who my baby really was, not who I wanted her to be. I stepped outside crying under my sunglasses and called my husband. I told him that was it. It was time. We needed to listen to what she was trying to tell us and stop caring about what everybody else will think about. I convinced him to take her to a barber and get her hair cut like a boy, like he wanted it. When he got home, I had a button-down shirt and a tie ready for him. He put them on, and he couldn't stop staring at himself. We actually witnessed the alignment of physical self with mental self happen right in front of our eyes. I'll never forget that moment as long as I live. It was like he looked in the mirror, and for the first time, everything made sense. What he was feeling on the inside finally matched the outside. We had never seen him smile like this before. He was absolutely beaming. In my heart, a mother's heart, I knew what responsibility came along with the fact that my child was being so outspoken and honest with me. And I knew that if I shut him down and told him he was wrong for feeling this way, that I would shut him out. That he would eventually get sick of hearing me and conform somehow to the message of unacceptable self-expression I was sending him. And somewhere down the road, when he was older, he would look back and say, "You never believed in me," and I would lose him, along with causing severe damage before he walked away from me. He would keep it all inside, like so many do, because social construct screams these predetermined gender roles at us everywhere we turn, and that damage would be because of me. He wasn't born to live the life I wanted him to live. This was and is his life. I can only try to teach him the things that really matter, like being a kind, honest, smart, hardworking, and overall good person. Those things matter so much more than what clothes we wear and what pronouns we feel most comfortable using. He confided his sacred trust in me. I had accomplished what I set out to do the day he came into this world. He came to me and was asking for my help. I had instilled enough safety within our relationship for him to be sharing these most painful feelings with me. In therapy, we were taken to our knees by the alarming statistics of suicide amongst transgender youth. My child faced a 41% chance of attempting suicide by the time he was 18 years old, as stated by the National Center for Transgender Equality that year. Yet, if he had only one affirming parent in his life, that statistic drastically decreased, almost to that of his cisgender peers. As scared as we were, at that point it was a no-brainer. We'd rather have a living son than a dead daughter. Just because we didn't understand didn't make it any less real. So we dove in and learned as much as we could. We heard horrific stories from other parents about their children who had hid their true gender identity for years and suffered from horrendous depression, engaged in self-harm, attempted suicide, and tragically, those who took their own lives. We weren't certain what our child's future would look like, but we knew what it would look like if we didn't listen to his feelings, and we couldn't risk that. So we socially transitioned him by affirming his preferred name and his preferred pronouns, and we let him dress how he felt most comfortable. We invited our close family and friends over, and I explained all we had learned in a pitch-like presentation, desperate for their support. They embraced us and Austin and have been our saving grace since that day. Then we faced our biggest fear up until that point, school. Through honesty, vulnerability, education, and advocacy, Austin wasn't just tolerated at his school. He was embraced, empowered, and uplifted. I was even given the opportunity to speak in front of almost the entire faculty at the end of kindergarten year to tell his brave story of transition. The impact in the room was palpable. I will forever be indebted to the administration at our school for navigating this alongside us. Unfortunately, this isn't the case for a lot of kids like Austin. We face every obstacle with transparency because visibility is so important in influencing change. But visibility without the proper support and willingness to be an ally to these brave kids can be flat out dangerous. We are literally in the midst of a modern-day civil rights movement for the LGBTQ+ community. For me, fixing the world lies in how we raise the next generation of global citizens, because they will determine the next evolution of our people. Parent the child you have, not the child you thought you'd have. This has been an evolving journey from crisis to empowerment, a story of grief, acceptance, transition, and a newfound mission to make this world a more accepting place for all our kids. If we look back in time, it was brave individuals like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Harvey Milk, and countless others who stood strong in their convictions, never wavered, sacrificed more than most can fathom, and weathered the storms of fear, hate, and ignorance, who were responsible for all the monumental movements in history that forever changed this world for the better. When we know better, we do better. I read somewhere once that we teach our children to color in the lines and then expect them to think outside the box. Think how much has changed in the last 75 years. We have evolved and we will continue to evolve. If we don't, then what's the point of it all? Be your child's fiercest advocate. It will have a profound impact on their ability to thrive. Unconditional love and acceptance has the power to change the trajectory for any child, forever changing the unspoken and shame-filled narratives of the past. Listening to others more and passing judgment less. We will always have more in common in the human condition alone than not. And to my sweet Austin and anybody else out there standing up for who you are right now, May you always be as brave as you are right now. Drown out the noise. I admire you more than you'll ever know. The closet is no place for anyone, especially a child. Thank you.